When I think of Europe, I think of the grandfather of the world. From the Industrial Revolution that started in Great Britain, right throughout to the landing on the moon. Even though the Americans can brag about it, the first spacesuit was invented by a Spaniard. From the submarine that was invented by the Irish, right throughout to the World Wide Web, Europe still plays an important role for us today. Out of Europe, many cultures that we know of today, including the American culture, the Australian culture, the South African culture, and of course not to mention the colonization of many of these countries. Actually, as far as 80% of the world that was colonized by only 8% of landmass. That is Europe, and that is what we're going to be talking about today. Whether we like it or not, whether in our human condition, in the human reality that we find ourselves in the spiritual sense, Europe is and was a big deal. But for many people, Europe is a holiday destination. In missions, it seems that Europe is increasingly becoming less and less of a place of godly principles and more a place where materialism has become its new owner. When we think of, for example, Great Britain and how many missionaries have gone out from her into the world and have done incredible things against all odds, it really does remind us that Europe had a wonderful and does have a wonderful purpose in God's eyes. In 2013, the Center for the Study of Global Christianity discussed how mission trends are actually becoming different in how it's being reversed. According to this article by Global Cost Resources, today the majority are from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. In 2010, out of 400,000 co-workers that were sent out internationally, nearly half of them were from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Additionally, since we know the 2014 refugee crisis that has swept across the world, Europe has also evolved into a hot spot for serving among such people groups and having the advantage of doing this outside a warlike scenario. With me here today to discuss this topic further is Adele Haynes, a co-worker and fellow friend for the Kingdom. Thank you so much, Adele, for joining us on Relevance.
Thank you so much that I can join, and it's such an honor to be here.
Yeah. It's an honor to have you. Yeah, so let's start with the good news. Let's say, how much of good news would you say is there when looking at the European context and kind of seeing that missional call still until today? You know, is there unity to some degree? Can we say that with confidence?
Yes, I think it's important to firstly say that as I've been here since 2017, I've honestly seen many things that has shocked me on the one hand, and at the same time has brought a lot of joy to my heart, because I've seen how people here in Germany, how there are many of those who follow the Lord, who has really got a fire in their hearts, and they are really serious in reaching out.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so that really comforted me and inspired me. And I'm still meeting people like that. So that is really something that we can keep on praying for them for this. Mm-hmm. And also in the past, I mean, it is so amazing to read. If you start reading up about different missionaries and workers and disciple makers that have been sent out across many decades and centuries, and how these people have gone into really hard places. Even when we were working in Africa, I've met many Germans. It's so awesome, for example. And also recently I've met some of the workers from France and places that you would not know, is there any life left? But yes, definitely there are people. And I that's why I firstly want to really say that I honor these people, honestly, for what they've been doing through very hard and difficult times here. And it excites me, honestly.
It's so incredible. It makes me think also of the types of cultures that you would least expect it from. I remember when we were in the Middle East as well, seeing some Chinese co-workers there in those regions. And you think to yourself, you know, you would never expect it. But that movement has also been taking such wonderful initiative, and it's really exciting to see how they've also been spread out throughout the world. So in what way do you think does Germany and the wider Europe need spiritual support in a season of displacement and a season of depression and trauma, I guess, with these people groups having streamed into these places from different parts?
Yes, I think definitely there's a lot of support needed, especially as this influx was in a sense not expected. And I remember from stories that people have told me of locals, Germans and so on, how they had to suddenly start to make plans how to receive all these people. One person told me how they would stand on the train stations, and as these people came, so many of them on the trains, and get onto the station and not knowing where to go. They have no idea where to go next. And they're already tired. They're already so exhausted from what they've experienced. And coming here, they suddenly don't know what do they do next. And how these Germans really went out of their way. They would stand day after day on the stations and receiving these people. And now we look back, and it's been a couple of years later, and they really need, like Moses needed his hands to be held up in this really difficult time when there was such a fight going on. These people really need their hands to be lifted up, because it's been long and outstretched, and there is no end in sight, really, because they're still busy integrating and needing to find work here and so on. And then, of course, also among the locals, our German friends who truly follow God, they really need our support, because it's not easy reaching out to their fellow Germans. And so really the body of the Lord in this place really needs our support from across the world.
Very true. Definitely. Very true. Yeah. How do you find the openness for spiritual conversations with these different people groups that you encounter in Germany? As you try to help them and to support them spiritually, do you feel there's kind of a resistance, or have you experienced more openness from them?
Yeah, that's quite an interesting question, because I must honestly say that as we started to encounter people here, I realized that for the general public, the general European public, they have in many senses made their choice to stay with what they believe. And they do not really welcome any spiritual conversation, especially when you don't know them or in public or so on. So they actually prefer not to have this, whereas many of our migrant friends are much more open to spiritual conversation, because their whole conversation is in any way usually filled with sayings and things that they say about God. So it's not strange for them to mention him in any way. And so, of course, our hearts are still to reach out to them and to bring the truth and the life to them that we experienced in the Lord. But it's awesome to know that in both these cases, I found that it's actually crucial to build friendship, to build relationship before you just spill it all out. And this takes time, and it takes a lot of patience. And love. Yeah. And so what is awesome is to know that actually you would have expected in the past maybe that our European friends would be the ones who would be the quickest to have these conversations. But for me now, I would say in both sides, you need to build relationship. Mm-hmm. You need to be gentle and to really let them first trust you. And so I would say my approach at this point would almost be, in many cases, would be almost the same. Yeah. Start with friendship and wait and let them trust you and share. The most important thing I think we can do is from the start is simply share. Simply share what has God done for you. What has he done in your life? What has he made new? And you're not at all making it hard for them, because you're not challenging them with anything yet. Maybe in their thoughts they are challenged about, why do I not experience this? But they are not challenged and put under pressure or anything of that. They can just simply listen and say, wow, that's interesting, So yeah, I think in this way it's an interesting shift that this has taken. Yeah.
Interesting shift of how we do this kind of work, because I remember at some point it was very important to do it in a certain way, and all of a sudden it's shifted to really speaking through your lifestyle and using that as the biggest. It reminds me of that scripture in Revelation that says, and they overcame through the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. And that truly, it seems that this kind of work takes on a new form and a new context in today's world.
Yes. Definitely, most definitely. And I think the moment you meet someone, it is so important to start praying for them, for their
Yeah.
hearts and their
Yeah.
spirit just to open up. I think that's sometimes we try so hard with all our own ways and trying to convince, we feel such a urgency in us to do this instead of the urgency of praying for them, for their spirits to open, for the fight that's over their lives to actually start loosening up, for the dark clouds to leave, that there can be this contact between them and God.
For
And
sure.
then it's just awesome to meet them maybe 2 weeks after you see them the first time, and they would speak of something and you think, what?
How did that happen? There's a part of them that opened up more and more to that being able to speak into that way. Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. So
Yeah.
we've talked on how you've had a discussion once with a man of Slavic origin, which is quite interesting to me, kind of begging in the streets of Hamburg. And do you think the situation in Europe creates this type of difficult position for such people where they need to work in Europe, but at the same time they're not really prepared and they're not ready for that extreme worldly, I would call it a worldly buffet of temptations, I would say, that European countries tend to offer them?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a challenge because I think many of them, I've actually had a few that I would, they would be begging, and I would just have a conversation, or I'd pray for them, or whatever the Lord puts in my heart, which is also interesting because they're much more open again. They're really open to that. I can pray for them or speak with them. And I also feel in my heart this, they don't have so much resistance. And I think also because of the place that they're at, the place in their lives where they have really come to a rock bottom. But with them, definitely, it is really sad to see because firstly, they come here with the hope of finding a job because they have such a need back home. And then when they arrive here, the system is just in such a way, it's made to support people. And it's awesome, really, in many ways. It's really awesome. And it's actually supposed to keep people off from the streets. The problem is just that if you're not in the system, it's terribly hard to get in. And for these people, especially from these countries, and like you said, the Slavic, they struggle. They really, not everyone, and some of them manage to get in. But so that's the first part of this is, yes, it is a struggle. And then secondly, they are faced with all these different temptations that they were not prepared for. And it's really sad. There are places here that people can be helped with clean needles and things. And it's such a difficult story because on the one hand, we can see that they mean to do good. The people, the health people, they mean to do good, and they mean to prevent these people from getting all other kinds of diseases. But at the same time, literally, there's always this crowd standing there, and
these are needles used for specific for drugs, yeah.
So many of them see this. They are tempted with it. The streets or at certain areas. So there are some areas, of course, that this is not really happening. But then there are these cluster areas where these things are really bad and sometimes a bit out of hand in that case,
and sometimes to a much larger and higher and more intense extent than, say, it would be in second or third world countries, almost because of so much money being involved and so much riches and privilege being involved in kind of advertising that. We've experienced the same problem with some people that we work with here in Ukraine, where they have to move to the Czech Republic for work because there is so little work here. And oftentimes they experience the same type of temptations where around many corners there are the women of the night or situations like this, and the men fall, so many of them fall and have to eventually divorce their wives, and it's terrible to see how many of them have made that first step into faith, and then all of a sudden when they move to the Czech Republic for work alone, not taking their wives or their families with, it's almost then when the enemy strikes and tries to to pull them down. How do you think do these migrants from different countries, how do you think they experience Europe? Of course, we've spoken now about some of the Slavic people coming to Europe mainly for work purposes, and we're mainly speaking of Western Europe now. But especially as Europe is representing Christianity in the migrant eyes, how do you think they experience this region?
Yeah, I think this is a really sad, because we have quite a lot of conversations with them, and they would always refer to Europe as Christian. And they would say that, but well, look at how it is. Look at how Christianity is. There is no standards. In fact, it makes our work sometimes quite difficult, because they would just simply say, but if this is what Christianity look like, we do not want to stoop down to this level. And really, this is a serious problem, and it takes so many conversations where we really need to explain to them that this is not what the Lord wants. This is not his heart. This is not what he has given us. And that we need to tell them we need to live holy and pure lives. We need to live lives that is sacrificed to the Lord, in a way that we do not live for ourselves any longer. We live for him, you know.
And to a certain extent, many parts of Europe does not really represent Christian in its truest form anymore, because and trying to be able to in a way not divide, but remove some of its concepts from what it should be and what it isn't, what it is today and what it should be, and how it's not the same that it used to be anymore, and helping them understand that reality, I think, is important.
Very, very important. So I think there are quite a bit of people needed actually in this country to help represent, when they start reaching out to our migrant friends, to really bring the perspective back to what it should be. It's very, very important. If it's not communicated, that perception will stay. And it would cause them to hold back. It would cause them not to want to know anything about the Lord, or really it would cause so much of them straying, because this is the other problem. They come here, they have been traumatized by what they've experienced, and now they come here, and this is the one side, those who really want to stay according to themselves, what they experience as being faithful in their faith, they would try and keep away. Then there are the other side to this, and these coming here, fleeing or really trying to find shelter here with this mindset that this is Christian Europe. But in their case, they have the same problem than our Slavic friends and friends from the eastern part of Europe, that they are tempted, they are confronted with so many temptations here. And unfortunately, this is the other side of our problem, that many of our friends that we work with have started to fall back into these things, into alcoholism, into drugs, and things that is actually in their areas are offered, like
really offered,
and all these things in their areas. I mean, in their areas where they prefer to shop, where their local shops are selling the things that they need for their kind of food, you will find those things there. And this breaks my heart, honestly, because this makes it even harder. So when we encounter someone, they're still holding on to their old faith, but they also have indulged in many of these things, and it's created a lot of confusion and heavy dependencies as well, addictions. Yeah, that makes it really, really hard. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you, Adele. Thank you for clarifying, and thank you for sharing with us a little bit more about this European context that we find ourselves in today, and the need that has arisen for co-workers to move to those parts of the world instead of just focusing on the areas that seem to be the most necessary. It seems that the Lord has carved out a very special opportunity for us as believers and as His children to make a difference.
Certainly. Yes,
thank you so much. Do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to share with us?
Well, just this, that I think it's so important whenever we reach out to people around us, that we really do it in the Lord's love. You know, many times we've been challenged by the things and been offended by the things people say and do against us, and we cannot react from those offenses, and we cannot start to act out of the flesh. We really need to act in love. We really need the Lord's overwhelming, unconditional love, and it will move us to places that we would fear to go.
Amen.
His love will burn in our hearts. So I can just encourage all of us and the listeners as well, really to move in the Lord's love. Let His passion consume our hearts, and that we keep on seeing Him wanting to return and looking for a bride, looking for those who would follow Him faithfully.
Amen. Thank you so much. Adele Haynes, thank you so much. Thank you so much.